Imagine this. A world-famous celebrity walks into a humble diner, only to leave a hardworking waitress humiliated in front of everyone. But what happens next? It's a story of resilience, redemption, and a shocking twist that no one could have predicted. From the depths of humiliation to a national movement that shook the world. This tale will leave you speechless. Stay tuned, because you won't want to miss how one woman's quiet strength turned a cruel moment into a powerful statement that changed lives forever. It was a busy Saturday evening at the Silver Spoon, a small diner nestled on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The restaurant was packed, with families, couples, and solo diners enjoying their meals. The buzz of conversations and the clatter of dishes filled the air as the staff rushed to keep up with orders. Among the patrons sat none other than Snoop Dogg, dressed casually in a hoodie and sunglasses, trying to maintain a low profile. He was seated in a corner booth with two members of his entourage, enjoying what appeared to be an unplanned stop for some comfort food. Despite the casual nature of the visit, Snoop's presence hadn't gone unnoticed. A few diners whispered excitedly, some taking discreet photos, while others pretended not to notice the celebrity in their midst. At the heart of the chaos was Sarah, a 27-year-old waitress who had been working double shifts to support her young son. Her uniform was slightly faded, and her ponytail looked hastily tied, but her smile remained warm as she attended to customers. Sarah approached Snoop's table, trying her best to remain professional despite her nerves. She knew exactly who he was, and the pressure to provide perfect service felt overwhelming. "Good evening," she said with a polite smile, placing their drinks on the table. "Is there anything else I can get for you right now?" Snoop barely looked up, mumbling, "We're good." His entourage chuckled, exchanging glances, and Sarah quickly retreated to tend to her other tables. As the evening went on, Sarah returned to Snoop's table multiple times, refilling drinks and ensuring their food was delivered promptly. Despite her efforts, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The group barely acknowledged her, speaking in hushed tones and occasionally laughing as if at her expense. When the meal was over, Sarah brought the check and placed it on the table with her usual politeness. "Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed your meal," she said. Snoop leaned back in his seat, glancing at the bill. Without a word, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a wad of cash, and threw a few bills on the table. Far less than what was owed, with nothing left for a tip. "Keep the change," he said flatly, smirking as he stood to leave. His entourage laughed as they followed him out of the diner, leaving Sarah standing by the table, stunned. The entire room seemed to freeze as other diners watched the scene unfold. Sarah's cheeks burned with humiliation, but she quickly collected herself, gathering the cash and clearing the table. She whispered a quiet "thank you" to no one in particular and retreated to the kitchen, tears welling in her eyes. In the kitchen, Sarah sat on a stool, holding the crumpled bills in her hand. She had been insulted before, but this felt different. This felt personal. As she stared at the money, a mix of anger and determination began to brew within her. "I deserve better than this," she whispered to herself. Little did Sarah know, this moment would mark the beginning of something far bigger than she could have imagined. The night after the incident, Sarah sat alone in her small apartment. The tiny kitchen table was littered with unpaid bills, her son's homework, and the crumpled cash Snoop had left as a tip, or lack thereof. Her son, Adam, had already gone to bed, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room. Her mind replayed the humiliation she'd felt, the mocking laughter, the dismissive attitude, and the realization that someone as wealthy as Snoop Dogg had treated her like she didn't matter. But as the frustration boiled inside her, something else emerged, a sense of resolve. "This isn't just about me," she thought. "It's about everyone who's ever been disrespected for just doing their job." The next morning, Sarah decided to share her story. With shaky fingers, she typed a heartfelt post on social media. "Last night, I served a table at the diner where I work. One of the customers was a celebrity, someone I've admired for years. I worked hard to make sure everything was perfect for them. But when it came time to pay the bill, they left an insultingly small tip and walked out laughing. I know not everyone feels like tipping is necessary, but for people like me, every little bit helps. It's not about the money. It's about respect. I've worked double shifts every day this week to support my son, and being treated like I didn't matter was a blow I didn't need. To anyone reading this, remember to treat people with kindness. You never know what they're going through. Asterisk. She hesitated before hitting post, but after a deep breath, she did. She didn't name Snoop Dogg, but she didn't have to. Within hours, her story began to spread. By the end of the day, Sarah's post had been shared thousands of times. Comments flooded in from people all over the country. I've been there, Sarah. You deserve better. Celebrities need to remember where they came from. This is why tipping culture needs to change. Respect workers. As the post gained traction, local news outlets picked up the story. While Sarah had left Snoop's name out of her post, someone at the diner had recognized him and spilled the details. Breaking. Snoop Dogg faces backlash for insulting waitress at local diner, read one headline. The story snowballed, and soon hashtag respect service workers began trending on social media. Influencers and celebrities chimed in, many sharing their own stories of mistreatment while working in service jobs. Meanwhile, at his Los Angeles mansion, Snoop Dogg scrolled through his phone, his face twisting into a scowl as he saw the headlines. Man, what is this? He muttered. Denise, his publicist, called minutes later. We have a problem, she said bluntly. This story about the diner is blowing up, and your name is all over it. It's just one little post, Snoop replied dismissively. People will forget about it in a week. But Denise wasn't so sure. This isn't just about you, Snoop. People are tying it to a bigger issue, how service workers are treated. You need to address this before it gets worse. Snoop sighed, leaning back in his chair. Fine, I'll do something. But I'm not apologizing for something so small. Denise hesitated. If you're not careful, this could get out of control. While Snoop debated how to handle the situation, Sarah's story reached someone unexpected. Carla Williams, a well-known journalist and advocate for workers' rights. Carla had spent years exposing the struggles of low-wage workers, and she saw something powerful in Sarah's story. Carla reached out to Sarah directly. I saw your post, and I think your story could make a real difference, she said over the phone. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Sarah admitted. I just wanted people to think about how they treat workers. And they are, Carla replied. But this is bigger than you now. If you're willing, I'd like to interview you and share your story on a larger platform. Sarah hesitated. The idea of putting herself in the spotlight made her nervous, but she realized this could be an opportunity to stand up for people like her. Okay, she said finally. Let's do it. The following week, Sarah's interview aired on a major news network. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke about the night at the diner and what it meant to her. I'm not trying to attack anyone, she said. I just want people to remember that behind every apron is a person who deserves respect. The segment ended with a close-up of Sarah's face, her expression a mix of vulnerability and quiet strength. Meanwhile, Snoop watched the interview from his home, his jaw tightening as he realized this wasn't going away anytime soon. The morning after Sarah's interview aired, the internet exploded. Clips of her speaking about respect for workers went viral, and hashtag respect service workers continued to trend worldwide. Celebrities, activists, and regular people chimed in, sharing stories of service workers being mistreated. But amidst all the support for Sarah, another trend began to emerge. Hashtag Snoop Dogg's mistake. Snoop's team was in full damage control mode. Denise, his publicist, called an emergency meeting. This is spiraling out of control, Snoop, she said, pacing back and forth in his spacious living room. The media's eating this up. People are calling you out for being out of touch with your roots. You need to fix this now. Snoop slouched in his chair, sunglasses perched low on his nose. Man, all I did was leave a small tip. Why is everyone acting like I burned the place down? Denise's voice rose. Because it's not about the tip, it's about how you treated her. People see this as a symbol of how the wealthy disrespect the working class. You used to rap about the struggle, Snoop. People thought you understood what it's like to be on the bottom. Now they think you've forgotten. Snoop sighed, finally taking off his sunglasses. All right. I'll say something, but I'm not doing one of those fake apology videos. Denise shook her head. You don't just need to say something. You need to do something. This is bigger than a tweet. Meanwhile, Sarah's story continued to grow. Carla Williams' interview had not only shown a spotlight on her experience, but had also inspired people to rally around her. A local nonprofit for service workers reached out, offering her a platform to advocate for better treatment of restaurant staff. I never wanted to be the face of something like this, Sarah admitted during a meeting with the nonprofit. But you're giving people hope, the director said. Your story is making people think twice about how they treat workers. That's powerful. Sarah agreed to speak at a community forum about the struggles of low-wage workers. She spent hours preparing, writing down her thoughts, and rehearsing in her tiny apartment after Adam went to bed. Snoop's first attempt to manage the backlash came in the form of a social media post. He shared a picture of himself holding a stack of cash with the caption, "To all the hard workers out there, keep grinding. I see you. Flex biceps medium dark skin tone." The response was immediate and not in a good way. This isn't an apology. You're still flaunting your money while avoiding the real issue. How about you respect workers instead of just seeing them? Denise called him within minutes. Snoop, that post just made things worse. Man, people are too sensitive, he muttered. Sensitive or not, you need to own up to what happened. Otherwise, this is going to haunt you for a long time, Denise replied. A week later, Sarah stood nervously at the front of a packed community center. The room was filled with restaurant workers, activists, and curious onlookers. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras rolling as Sarah stepped up to the microphone. Good evening, she began, her voice shaking slightly. I'm not here to talk about one night or one celebrity. I'm here to talk about something bigger, the way service workers are treated every day. We work hard. We deal with long hours, low pay, and sometimes disrespect. But we deserve to be seen. We deserve to be respected. The audience erupted into applause. Sarah smiled, her confidence growing as she continued. We're not invisible. And I'm standing here today because I want to make sure no one feels invisible again. As Sarah finished her speech, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Reporters turned their cameras toward the back of the room. Snoop Dogg had just walked in. Wearing a simple hoodie and jeans, he looked far removed from his usual confident self. His entourage wasn't with him, and he seemed uncharacteristically subdued. Sarah froze, her heart pounding as he made his way to the front. The audience fell silent, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. When he reached the stage, he turned to Sarah. "Can I say something?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside to let him take the microphone. Snoop looked out at the crowd, his face serious. "I'm here because I messed up," he began. "I hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and I let a lot of people down. But I'm here to make it right." The room was silent, everyone hanging on his every word. What would he say next? The tension in the room was palpable as Snoop Dogg stood at the microphone. All eyes were on him, some filled with anger, others with curiosity. He took a deep breath, his usual swagger replaced with an air of vulnerability. "I know some of y'all are wondering why I'm here," he began. "And honestly, it's because I owe this woman and everyone else in this room an apology." The crowd remained silent, waiting for more. Sarah stood off to the side, her arms crossed, her expression cautious but open. "Let me start by saying this," Snoop continued. "I grew up knowing what it's like to hustle, to grind for every dollar. I used to be that kid looking up to people with money, thinking they had it all figured out. And somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. When I walked into that diner, I wasn't thinking about how hard the people there were working. I wasn't thinking about the woman who was running around making sure everything was right for me. I was just thinking about myself. And that was wrong. His voice cracked slightly, and he looked directly at Sarah. Sarah, I disrespected you, and for that I'm sorry. Truly, you didn't deserve that. The audience murmured, some nodding in approval, while others remained skeptical. One man stood up. It's easy to apologize now that you're getting dragged online, he said. What are you actually going to do about it? Snoop nodded, acknowledging the challenge. That's fair, he said. Words are easy. Actions are harder. That's why I'm not just here to apologize. I'm here to make a commitment. He turned back to the microphone. Starting today, I'm donating $500,000 to organizations that support service workers and advocate for fair wages. And I don't just want to write a check. I want to be involved. I want to use my platform to make sure people like Sarah don't feel invisible anymore. The room erupted into applause, though there were still a few skeptical faces in the crowd. Sarah watched him carefully, trying to gauge his sincerity. When the applause died down, Sarah stepped forward, taking the microphone from Snoop. I appreciate the apology and I think it's a good start, she said. But this isn't just about money. It's about changing the way people think. About workers, about respect, about basic human decency. Snoop nodded. You're right, he said. And I'm ready to listen. Tell me what I can do. For the next 30 minutes, the crowd engaged in a heated but productive discussion. Service workers shared their stories of mistreatment. Activists proposed ideas for change. And Sarah spoke passionately about the need for respect and empathy. Snoop listened intently, occasionally chiming in to offer his support. For the first time, the divide between him and the people in the room began to feel smaller. As the forum wrapped up, Snoop approached Sarah privately. I want to work with you, he said. Not just to fix what I did, but to make something real out of this. What do you say? Sarah hesitated. She had spent the past week trying to rebuild her dignity after the humiliation she'd faced, and part of her wasn't sure she could trust him. But another part of her, the part that wanted to make a difference, felt like this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. Okay, she said finally, but only if we're in this together. No half measures. You got it, Snoop replied, extending his hand. They shook on it, and a ripple of applause spread through the remaining crowd, who had been watching the exchange. That night, news outlets and social media exploded with clips from the forum. Some praised Snoop for stepping up and taking responsibility, while others remained doubtful of his intentions. For Sarah, it was a turning point, but one filled with uncertainty. Could she and Snoop really make a difference? Or would this partnership crumble under the weight of public pressure? The partnership between Sarah and Snoop Dogg had sparked a whirlwind of attention. News outlets covered their unexpected alliance, social media debated their sincerity, and the world waited to see if this would be yet another empty celebrity promise, or something more. For Sarah, it was a new chapter. Her life had transformed from quiet struggles to a platform where her voice could make a difference. For Snoop, it was a reckoning, a chance to rebuild his reputation and reconnect with the values he once rapped about. But the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. 2 months after the community forum, Snoop and Sarah stood together on a stage in Los Angeles to announce their new initiative, the Respect Workers Fund. The fund, backed by Snoop's initial $500,000 donation, aimed to provide grants for restaurant workers, fund job training programs, and advocate for better working conditions. Sarah would serve as the face of the campaign, while Snoop would use his platform to bring attention to the cause. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Sarah stepped up to the microphone. This isn't just about me, she said, her voice steady and strong. It's about every service worker who's ever been overlooked, disrespected, or undervalued. This fund is just the beginning. We're here to create a movement, one that reminds the world that everyone deserves respect. The crowd erupted into applause, and for a moment, Sarah felt a flicker of pride. But not everyone was convinced. Critics accused Snoop of using the initiative as a PR stunt, while others questioned whether Sarah had the experience to lead such a large-scale project. Online debates grew heated, with hashtags like #RespectWorkers and #SnoopRedemption trending side by side with #PRStunt. Behind the scenes, tensions began to rise. During a meeting about the initiative, Sarah clashed with members of Snoop's team. They wanted to focus on flashy marketing campaigns to generate donations, while Sarah pushed for grassroots efforts that would directly impact workers. "This isn't about making it look good," Sarah argued, her frustration clear. "It's about making it real. And we can't do anything real if we don't raise the money first," one of Snoop's advisors shot back. Snoop, sitting at the head of the table, rubbed his temples. "All right, enough," he said finally. "We'll find a way to do both. But no more arguing. We're in this together." Just as things seemed to be gaining momentum, disaster struck. A major news outlet published an exposé accusing Snoop of not fully committing to the fund. The article claimed that only a fraction of his initial donation had been distributed and implied that the initiative was more about repairing his image than helping workers. Sarah was devastated. She had put her heart into the project, and now it was being undermined by the very person she'd partnered with. She confronted Snoop in his office, her voice shaking with anger. "Is any of this real to you? Or was this just about saving face?" Snoop looked genuinely hurt. "Sarah, I told you, I'm in this for real. That article? It's bull. I've been working behind the scenes to make this work. You gotta trust me." But trust wasn't easy to come by. For the first time, Sarah questioned whether she'd made a mistake by aligning herself with him. A week later, Snoop surprised Sarah with a visit to her apartment. He brought Adam a small gift, a basketball signed by one of Adam's favorite players, but it was clear he wasn't there for small talk. "Sarah, I get it," he said. "You don't trust me, and maybe I haven't done enough to prove that I'm serious about this. But let me show you something." He handed her a stack of papers. Plans for a new restaurant worker relief center, complete with a detailed budget and timeline. "This is where the money's going," he said. "I've been working on this quietly because I didn't want it to seem like I was just doing it for the cameras. But I need your help to make it happen." Sarah studied the papers, her skepticism slowly melting away. For the first time, she saw real evidence of Snoop's commitment. Months later, the first Respect Workers Relief Center opened in downtown Los Angeles. The center offered free job training, legal advice, and mental health resources for restaurant and service workers. At the grand opening, Sarah and Snoop stood side by side, cutting the ribbon as cameras flashed. A crowd of workers cheered, many of them thanking Sarah personally for standing up and making a difference. Snoop addressed the crowd with an emotional speech. "I used to think respect was something you earned by being on top," he said. "But Sarah showed me that respect is something you give, no matter who you're dealing with. And that's what this is about, giving back the right way." As the event wound down, Sarah found herself standing alone on the steps of the center, watching families and workers walk inside. Snoop approached her, his usual swagger replaced with quiet sincerity. "You were right," he said simply. "About everything." Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of closure she hadn't expected. "You proved me wrong, Snoop. I didn't think you'd follow through, but you did. Had to," he said with a grin. "Couldn't let you outshine me." They both laughed, the weight of the past months finally lifting. In the months that followed, the Respect Workers Fund grew into a national movement, inspiring similar initiatives in other cities. Sarah became a powerful advocate for service workers, while Snoop used his platform to amplify their voices. The night at the diner that had once left Sarah humiliated was now a distant memory, replaced by a story of resilience, redemption, and real change. What do you think of this incredible story of transformation and justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll do my best to reply to as many of you as I can. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Together, we can keep spreading the message of respect and kindness. See you in the next video.